Hi, welcome to another sneak peek Saturday at the Alameda Free Library. My name is Jenny and today we're gonna read some fiction. I have to say the cover really did it to me. So this book is called The Dating Plan and it is by Sara Desai. As always, I'm gonna read you the back of the book so you have a little bit of an idea what this will be about. Daisy Patel is a software engineer who understands lists and logic better than bosses and boyfriends. With her life all planned out and no interest in love, the one thing she can't give her family is the marriage they expect. Left with few options, she asks her childhood crush to be her decoy fiancé. Liam Murphy is a venture capitalist with something to prove. When he learns that his inheritance is contingent on being married, he realizes his best friend's little sister has the perfect solution to his problem. A marriage of convenience will get Daisy's matchmaking relatives off her back and fulfill the terms of his late grandfather's will. If only he hadn't broken her tender teenage heart 10 years ago. Sparks fly when Daisy and Liam go on a series of dates to legitimize their fake relationship. Too late, they realize that very little is convenient about their arrangement. History and chemistry aren't about to follow the rules of this engagement. All right, a little bit something on the lighter side. All right. This dating plan. Chapter 1. Daisy Patel had no issues with besotted lovers hiding away in a toilet cubicle for a little covert tongue gymnastics. For the most part, technology conferences were stressful and boring, and if someone could find a little lip-loving between networking, speakers, and seminars, she didn't begrudge them their happiness. In this case, however, the gold medal winner of the twist and tangle in the women's restroom at the Oakland Convention Center happened to be her ex-boyfriend, Orson Fisk. And the woman in his arms was her former boss, Madison Montgomery, CEO of Activize LLC. Her attempt to draw their attention fell on deaf ears. Or maybe they didn't care. Maybe Orson had been bespelled, and when he was finally released from Madison's clutches, he would realize he'd made a mistake breaking up with a neurotic software engineer and her Pecora-loving pup. Daisy and Max came as a package. Dog haters, be warned. Curiously numb at the sight of her ex wrapped around her old boss like the most tenacious of invasive species, she'd caught a glimpse of them in the mirror before they'd closed the stall door. Daisy slid a quarter into the disposable menstrual product dispenser. She'd been under no illusion when Orson had asked her out after they'd met in a developer week hackathon in Oakland, California. Clearly, he was desperate for a hookup. After all, not many men were interested in a woman who lived by plans and quantifiable results and could do one compile a day in C++ in a POSIX environment with 0 errors. They wanted the prom queens, not the class valedictorians. The women who wielded fashion as a weapon and not a shield. So she'd been thrown off her manic pixie dream girl game when Orson had called after their one-night stand and asked her out again. 35 going on 65, devoid of any body fat and possessing a wispy goatee, Orson had introduced her to long walks, black coffee, art house films, slow jazz, gourmet cooking, and the benefits of intellectual over physical relationships. They worked in the same field, attended the same conferences, and shared the same interest in the online world. It should have been perfect, and yet she'd never once in the 4 weeks they'd been seeing each other, making it the longest relationship in her life, thought of introducing him to her family. Serious relationships were not in a life plan that involved working hard, looking after her dad, and growing old alone in the house where she'd been born. Orson tugged on Madison's blouse, tearing the top button to reveal the secret treasures of a woman seriously lacking in discretion. There was nothing intellectual about his frenzied pawing. If Daisy had known tearing off clothes was one of Orson's skills, she might have put a ring on it right away. But she'd been plagued with doubt. Why didn't she feel the flutters in her chest that were supposedly indicative of love? Where were the birds that were supposed to be tweeting around her head? Did she have some kind of chemical imbalance, or was something else wrong? Only when she caught Orson and Madison doing the nasty in Madison's office late one evening did she finally feel something. Relief. As she had always suspected, she was meant to be alone. Turning the crank as slowly as possible to minimize the decibel level of menstrual product release, she glanced over again at Orson and Madison pawing at each other like horny teenagers. She should make a quick exit before she said something awkward that would make the situation infinitely worse. Her tendency to blurt out whatever was on her mind had gotten her into trouble too many times. She was happiest alone in her cubicle at work, fully immersed in a screen of code, her favorite dance beats playing over the headphones. There was beauty in the simplicity of programming. If something was illogical, it simply wouldn't work. Maybe there was a message here that wasn't getting through. She assessed the situation as if it were code and came up with connection failed. It was a story of her life all over again. The menstrual pad dropped into the dispenser with a soft thud. Her new boss, Tyler Dawes, CEO of Organicare, only needed one of the competitors' pads for the demonstration. But what if something went wrong? If they didn't secure more venture capital funding soon, the company would shut down and all of the Organicare's employees would be out of work. It didn't help that Tyler was a terrible salesman. A professor at Caltech with a PhD in chemical engineering, he had become involved in developing sustainable organic menstrual products after his daughter Christina realized that there was a gap in the market. With hard work and millions in venture capital funding, they had built a successful subscription-based direct-to-consumer business with an app-based product for lifestyle, health, and wellness. And then everything had gone wrong. Daisy pushed another quarter into the slot and yanked on the dial. If Tyler had asked her to pitch with him when he first signed up for the conference, she wouldn't have been in the restroom at all. Daisy didn't go into meetings unprepared. Instead of sweating it out as she tried to dispense a pad in silence, she would have been seated in the air-conditioned conference room, sipping homemade chai from her thermos as she mentally rehearsed a demonstration she would have practiced for weeks. Still oblivious to her presence, Orson and Madison continued to make out in the toilet stall, shaking the metal walls as they grappled and groaned. The toilet flushed, not once or twice, but 3 times in quick succession. Daisy hoped it was from an access of passion and not because they had the dodgy seafood at the buffet lunch. She'd told herself to avoid it, but those prawns had been so tempting. In any event, it was all very disappointing. When she and Orson had been together, he had been an efficient, no-nonsense lover, expressing the satisfactory outcome of their coupling with a whoosh of air followed by a glass of Rioja, and a deep dive into Aristotle's science of logic envisioned through the syllogism. There had been no moans or panting, no bras falling on the filthy tiles, thank God, and no automatic toilets flushing a symphony of germs into the air. The second pad dropped out of the machine, followed by another and another. Boxed pads shout out of the machine, hitting Daisy in the chest like bullets. She dropped to a crouch, scrambling to catch them before they touched the floor. Is someone there? Madison called out. Oh no. Oh, the Bourgemanette. Programmer slang for catastrophic data failure, or in this case, a malfunctioning menstrual pad machine. Panicking, Daisy grabbed the boxes and bolted out of the restroom. Daisy, I was looking for you. Selina Auntie, her father's sister, ambushed her only a few steps from the door. What are you doing here, Auntie G? Chest heaving, she looked over her shoulder to make sure she hadn't been followed. The last thing she wanted for Madison and Orson to think she'd been spying on them. Although she'd been devastated by their betrayal, she wasn't the type of woman who wanted revenge. Nor would she ever stoop to begging Orson to take her back. She wasn't that pathetic. One unfortunate drunk dial had cured her of that. I was having lunch with my friend Anushka and her son, Roshan, and they mentioned he was looking for a wife. Selina Auntie gestured to the tall, handsome man behind her. I thought you'd be perfect for each other. I called your office and they said you were here, so we thought we'd drop in. Daisy bit back a groan. Her aunties had been on a mission to get her married ever since her cousin Layla had gotten engaged, approaching the task with military precision. They showed up unannounced and unexpected at her home, her gym, grocery stores, and malls, always with an innocent bachelor in tow, and always on the pretense of just being in the neighborhood, even if the neighborhood was an hour away. I'm so sorry, Daisy shot what she hoped was an apologetic smile at the dark-haired stranger. I don't have time to chat. I'm about to go into a pitch session and I have to get these product samples to my boss. But you haven't even met Roshan. Another time, she bolted away, clutching the boxes of pads as she wove in and out of the crowd, her heart pounding in her chest. When she'd woken up this morning, she would never have guessed she would be pulled away from her cozy workspace and dragged to a tech conference, only to wind up on the run from her ex with an armload of pets and her matchmaking auntie hot on her heels. Maybe she hadn't woken up. Maybe this was just a dream, and any moment now she would open her eyes and oof! She hit a slab of something rock hard and teetered back on red Mary Janes that were slightly too high for comfort but looked fabulous with her red flowered mini dress. Daisy didn't care that her feet were usually hidden away under her desk all day. Shoes made an outfit, whether they were kitten heels with kitten faces, funky flats decorated with embroidered bananas, or even her blinked up biker boots. Her shoes were always the finishing touch of her somewhat eclectic sense of style. Off balance, she dropped the pads, her hands flailing for purchase, her Marvel Universe tote bag swinging from her shoulder. Tyler was going to kill her if she didn't die from the cerebral hemorrhage that would be inevitable once her head hit the tile floor. At last, Selina Auntie was there. One text and the entire Patel family would know when and how she died, and the funeral would be arranged before the ambulance arrived to take her to the morgue. Time slowed and she squeezed her eyes shut as she fell, trying to remember every moment of her 27 years on Earth. Happy family, sad family, small family, big family, heartache, heartbreak, Max. She was so preoccupied with reliving her most poignant memories that it took her a moment to realize she was no longer airborne. Strong, warm hands encircled her waist, holding her safe. "Are you okay?" Deep, warming, and as delicious as liquid caramel. The voice sent a tingle of electricity down her spine and a jolt of recognition through her body as hard as the strong arms around her. She knew that voice. She had heard it almost every day for 10 years. Her gaze lifted, and for a moment she forgot to breathe. Liam freaking bastard Murphy. Her brother's one-time best friend, her undying preteen crush, teen obsession, and still the object of her nightly fantasies. The man who had broken her heart and disappeared from her life, never to be seen and heard from again. Her pulse kicked up a notch as the still functioning part of her brain catalogued his appearance. Time had worn hard lines and chiseled planes into what had once been a slightly rounded face, tipping the balance from simply handsome into breathtakingly gorgeous. A 5 o'clock shadow darkened his jaw, and his lips were firm and curved into the familiar smile that had once made her weak in the knees. "Daisy?" His voice rose slightly in pitch, and her gaze snapped up to eyes as blue as the ocean she had wanted to drown herself in after Liam stood her up on the night of her senior prom and scurried off into oblivion, like the lowly, night-crawling scumbag he had turned out to be. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. How did she express the maelstrom of emotions coursing through her veins? It had been 10 years since she'd stood alone on the front steps of her house in a bright pink prom dress. The corsage her father had brought her pinned to her shoulder, waiting for Liam to take her to the prom. 10 years since he'd disappeared, never to be seen again. How many times had she imagined this moment? Should she slap him or kick him in between the legs? And that was the first chapter. Hope you enjoyed this. Again, the book is by Sara Desai, and it's called The Dating Plan. You can find it in our news section by the sticker, and it is by the author's last name. As always, I hope you enjoyed this sneak peek Saturday, and I see you again next week. Bye.